and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast for our first ever Pocket Gamer Reacts. My name is Craig Chapple, I'm the head of content at PocketGamer.biz. Here with me today is Aaron Astle, our news editor. Thank you very much for joining, Aaron.
Hello, good to be here.
So we're going to talk about the big news of the day, which is Scopely has acquired Niantic's games business. So most of its games portfolio, the games that are being acquired and the games teams are Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, and Monster Hunter Now. They'll also take on the community building app Campfire and the Wayfarer service. The games that are not joining Scopely are Peridot and Ingress Prime, interestingly enough. Although the release strangely does say that all the games team is leaving. So I don't know who that means is left. Niantic itself is basically spinning off to its own tech company. They're going to focus on their AR technology and continue running those games that I mentioned. And they're going to be Niantic Spatial. They're going to be led by John Hankey, so he's not coming over, I guess, to Scopely. He's staying very much with Niantic Spatial. So a huge deal, and as we know, Scopely is owned itself by Savvy Games Group. So Scopely was bought for $4.9 billion, most famously known now for Monopoly Go. They've made a lot of other games with partner studios as well. Star Trek Fleet Command is one. I'm desperately trying to remember the other side. Yahtzee with Buddies, sorry, that they made with Mediatonic. Star Trek was made with Digit Game Studio. So Scopely obviously very well versed in mobile gaming. They've had huge fundraisers in the past before their acquisition. This is a super interesting deal. So, Aaron, what do you think?
Obviously, yeah, we had an inkling of what was going on last month after the rumours started coming out, but the actual announcement feels like it's come out of nowhere a little bit. I've just very frantically got something out on the site about it that everyone should go and read after they've listened to this. But no, obviously, yeah, it's a huge deal. Any of our regulars will know that I'm a big Monster Hunter Now player, so obviously that changing hands is going to be interesting. But good to hear that the team's going with it. I would have been a bit more on edge if they were just buying it and leaving the team behind. And obviously Pokemon Go is the flagship. That changing hands feels like just a huge deal, like in general. Like that is Niantic's whole thing, and obviously Pokemon Go is so it's got such a major part in the history of the mobile games industry, I would say. So yeah, it changing to a new owner is like automatically huge.
I mean, it was a massive phenomenon when it launched. Everyone was playing it. We've spoken before about it was one of the only games ever really that you walking around outside and someone's looking at their phone and you would just know that they're playing Pokemon, and you could strike up conversations with strangers. Quite a lovely time, really, especially in the UK where that rarely happens. So yeah, it's still going strong. We'll discuss some of the data in a bit, but it's not what it was, but then not what it was still means it's one of the most lucrative games in the world. One of the stats I can say is that, according to the press release, Niantic's games business drove more than $1 billion in revenue in 2024. So I think some of the things that interest me, I was looking through the press release, and I think the main thing that stuck out to me, and there are 3 different blog posts, by the way. 1 on the Pokemon Go website, 2 on the Scopely website, and then the actual press release. And Savvy is not mentioned in the press release. So Savvy Games Group is Saudi Arabia's games kind of business, where they're pumping $38 billion, I think, into games, whether that's kind of investments in big companies like Nintendo that they've done, or fully acquiring esports games companies again like Scopely. And this deal's perhaps, so one of the theories of why this deal has happened is this a Scopely deal, right? Or is it driven by Savvy Games Group that wants prestigious IP? And then also they'll probably want to bring, this is a guess, but they'll probably want to make more of Pokemon Go in Saudi Arabia. And they'll probably want to bring or develop a Niantic team in Saudi and drive that up, which is what they've been doing with Scopely. So with that in mind, Savvy is mentioned in one of these blog posts. which surprises me, like that they've just kept that name out. I wonder if they kept it out because of any potential controversy, or they just decided they want to focus on Scopely being the owner, Scopely being the experienced games company here. But yeah, I found that curious, and I'll try and find the quote. So the only place it's mentioned is at the end of one of these Scopely posts, and it just says, "We are incredibly lucky to be able to do deals of this scale with Savvy at our side. Collectively, we want to be one of the most dynamic and impactful games companies in the world. Finding exceptional teams of products to join our portfolio, like Niantic and its slate of real-world games, is key to accomplishing that mission. Savvy enables us to go after our long-term ambitions by supporting transactions of this magnitude. It represents one of the largest deals made by a public company by a private company in the last decade, ranking alongside Scopely's own acquisition." So it's basically one paragraph dedicated, and I felt like I had to dig through to find it. Yeah. So that was quite a surprise.
To your controversy point, like I might be totally off base here, but this is hot takes straight after the announcement. Yeah, so I wonder if because like Pokemon Go is developed, by Niantic in America, and then like Scopely's based in America, and obviously kind of the location data forms kind of an essential part of how Go works. We wonder whether there's any element there of whether they're a bit cautious of people reacting badly if suddenly all their location data is going to go into Saudi Arabia. So I might be totally off with that, but maybe that is a factor.
That's interesting. Personally, I don't think that would be a factor. Like, they're not going to get around that when it comes to, I guess, the deal being approved, you would think. That's a really interesting one. But it's not like, it's not the same situation in terms of relations politically as like the US with China.
No.
I think that would be a bit different, whereas this is not that. I think it's just more, not everyone, but like public perceptions. And again, it's all political stuff of Saudi Arabia. Whereas Saudi Arabia is trying to change that. And one of the ways that they're trying to do that is through games, which is another way. There's another reason that I'm kind of surprised. Like, well, this is if it's prestigious IP that's going, why not make a bigger thing of it?
Yeah.
But I can also see why not. The other thing that I find interesting about the deal is, yeah, they mentioned like they're taking the games over. So you were mentioning how happy you are. Monster Hunter Now is coming over. Pikmin Bloom is coming over. And again, we can go to some data on those. But obviously, the biggest driver is Pokemon Go. In a way, I'm surprised they didn't bring Peridot and Ingress over, but I guess like those games don't do anything. So it's not. They've not lost anything. I'm just surprised Niantic would also want to keep them. Maybe Scopely was it? We just don't want them.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, my point is that tune in the podcast tomorrow when I do a correction. But they mentioned like Monster Hunter Now, Pikmin Bloom, but not particularly that much. And again, they mentioned some stats. I just wonder like what the future is for those. They're reiterating their commitment to generally like these games, Pokemon Go in particular. Again, that is the main focus of all of these announcements. I haven't actually checked if there's like a Monster Hunter Now blog where they've done it like they have with Pokemon Go. Put the announcement on there.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look. I could do a live reaction and boot the game up in the background and see if it comes up with like just so you know. I can confirm there's no in-game announcement as yet, but I haven't looked at any blog posts.
Well, I mean on their website. But so that's all interesting. And then I guess the last thing I'll say for now, then we'll jump into some data, is what happens with Niantic Spatial moving forward. So I guess they have. So the press release says it's going to spin off into its own technology platform led by John Hankey. It will be a geospatial AI company powered by a next-generation map, enabling devices and machines to understand and interact with the physical world. Niantic Spatial will continue to own and operate AR games, Ingress Prime and Peridot. Read more on Niantic blog here. So there's another blog post. I'm gonna have to read through that. I'm curious what the future holds really for Niantic, because I think they've already struggled to actually get anyone to adopt. Well, one, they've struggled to make with the world's biggest IPs. I know Monster Hunter Now has done okay, right, for any studio. Pikmin Bloom's doing okay, but it's not on the level of Pokemon Go. And again, they're not like even Scope. I wouldn't even like Pikmin Bloom, especially is not a Scopely level game. But anyway, ranting. Sorry, Niantic has struggled to kind of bring the biggest IP, merge it with its platform, and release other successful games. I can't think of big customers that are using their platform successfully. I could be wrong. I don't think there are. And this kind of focus on augmented reality that they have had, at least, is like, what future are they waiting for now? You know, they've been at it for a few years. They obviously, the company itself made layoffs for it last year or the last couple of years. I'm like, are you waiting for AR glasses? Will that ever take off? Is that the big bet? And when you look at it, I'm going to be very pessimistic here, because they're obviously a very talented lot. But, you know, Magic Leap got billions to make its AR platforms a bit different because it's hardware. But they couldn't make anything of it. And so all this money that Niantic Spatial is now getting, is that actually gonna make this platform a success? It's a great exit for that team. Curious what they do with it. Maybe again, they're clever people, but I don't know where it goes from here.
Yeah, it's also obviously their focus is going to be on like the AR tech stuff rather than games. But obviously, when you look at the games, they have AR in them, but I'd argue really their success comes down to the location-based side of it.
Yeah,
as you were saying, like people going out to play Pokemon Go, that's because you need to, change locations while you're playing by walking around. Or like Monster Hunter now, you go out walking to find monsters. Like the AR is sort of optional. It's more about the location side of it. So even with the phenomenon that was and is Pokemon Go, like it's not really because of the AR side. So, it will be interesting to see whether in a few years we'll be all wearing AR glasses thanks to this.
So we really didn't prep for this. It was really hot take. So I'm reading this like live now, right? Niantic, in its blog post, is saying, we remain committed to creating forever games that will last generations. So that's curious. I don't know if they just mean supporting games or actually making them. Then they go on to say, this partnership ensures that our games have the long-term support needed to be forever games that would endure for future generations. They talk about Scopely's ongoing investment in those. But then it says, second, we are spinning off our geospatial AI business into a new company, Niantic Spatial, right? So we said that, enabling it to scale even more rapidly. But what it actually says as well is Niantic Spatial will be funded with $250 million of capital, including $200 million from Niantic's balance sheet and a $50 million investment from Scopely. So Scopely actually has a stake in this, which I guess they need to, because this technology powers the games that they've just bought. This is actually getting insane. They've now and then it goes, all of Niantic's original investors will continue to be shareholders of Niantic Spatial. Read more from John here. Then it goes to another link. It's like, I've got 6 tabs open. This is crazy.
If you want to up that to 8, there is also one on Monster Hunter Now's page and one on Pikmin Blooms.
So 8 different announcements. Well, that's positive, I guess, that they're saying. Presumably they're saying that those games will keep running. Yeah,
very similar wording, are basically saying they're excited to announce they've reached an agreement that Monster Hunter Now in one and Pikmin Bloom in the other are joining Scopely. Then this will be a step forward, and they'll kind of continue to build strong communities. Both of them say that, and then you can find out even more information in Niantic's announcement.
Don't. It's just an endless loop, isn't it? You get stuck forever. Yeah, that's really interesting that they've done that. And then on Niantic, just a couple other things. I'm literally reading it now. It says, Niantic Spatial's goal is to lead the future of geospatial AI by building spatial intelligence that helps people better understand, navigate, and engage with the physical world. So basically what they've been doing, but they're adding more about AI now, which I guess makes sense. Also, it was quite interesting there that they've just sold for $3.5 billion. $250 million is going to the new company.
Yeah.
It leaves quite a lot of money not going, which, again, fair as an exit. I'm not, but just interesting, because I was just saying before, what's $3 billion going to do? Now I'm like, well, what's $250 million really going to do? In terms of just creating that market. Yeah, then they go on to the Niantic Spatial platform, which they announced, I think, last year. visual positioning system, which I think they've spoken about before. And they're developing a large geospatial model, a world model powered by large-scale machine learning, so getting the AI buzzwords in, that enables people and machines to understand and navigate the physical world, enhances spatial reasoning in large language models by providing a spatially grounded and semantically rich understanding of real-world locations, built on a proprietary database of over 30 billion posed images. Interesting. It delivers an unparalleled foundation for geospatial AI, enabling a deeper contextual understanding of the real world. So I guess if I was to very quickly think what any of that means, stuff that we're already doing, but better for maps, and probably like you'll be able to attach virtual objects to the real world in a realistic and believable way. Is I guess what I read from that. But yeah, that's that part. That was a lot longer than I thought that was going to be after I just saw. But that's interesting. The extra details, we'll get that reported on the site as well. Hopefully before we even see this. I guess before we go on to some data, any thoughts on that?
Obviously, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this, as you say, whether if it's only but like 250 million, it's actually going into the kind of development that really doesn't seem like enough to change the whole space and make AR this major thing that I think they clearly would want it to be. But yeah, the fact it hasn't happened, yeah, it feels like it would need a lot more than that to really.
I guess they've already invested a lot in it, and maybe there's more where that came from. But they've already tried. I don't know. I could linger. They've already tried Marvel, Harry Potter. What's next? Disney Steps in Japan, but that's another company. I'm not sure if that uses Niantic's tech or not. Maybe it does. The last thing I didn't actually mention very quickly before we move on, it was that obviously Niantic is actually losing a lot of talent, but obviously game development talent. So along leaders, sorry for the pronunciation of these names, Keiko and Ed Wu are joining Scopely. I think they've been working on Pokemon Go for a long time. One of them since the start, basically, and was even at Niantic, I think, a few years before that game, before Pokemon Go came out. So kind of a big loss, but a good gain for Scopely and a positive for Pokemon Go. Scopely actually in the press release, Scopely actually provides a lot of data on how the games are performing. And Aaron, you did your post yesterday, I think. We published it yesterday. But using AppMagic data of how is the portfolio doing. It's quite interesting. So I'll go through quickly some of the official stats, not revenue, other than the Niantic made $1 billion last year.
Which does roughly track with the total.
It does actually, because it's like 700 million. Well, again, we'll go to that set, but 700 million for Pokemon Go and 200 over the last year and a half, 250 mil plus, I think. What's up now? So quickly on the stats, Pokemon Go, one of the most successful games of all time, they say. Cool, good press release, but true. Over 20 million weekly active players. It says it claims the game is a top 10 mobile title every year since its launch, based on IAP revenue from Data AI. Pokemon Go players have explored more than 30 billion miles together. I have a friend who's probably done 1 billion of those miles. He has multiple devices. Anyway, it said the experience reaches players in over 190 countries, so basically everywhere. Deeply engaged fan community that averages 40 minutes in daily playtime. Approximately half of all players return to the game 7 days a week. That's not you, Aaron, is it? You're doing the Monster Hunter now, right?
Yeah, I'm Monster Hunter now.
7 days a week?
And lately, I mean, they just did an update, so I'm back to
so you're the other login,
half. But yeah.
And then, in real life events, 2 million tickets were sold for Pokemon Go Fest in 2024. Attendees have caught 150 million plus Pokemon since the gatherings debuted. So really interesting for Pokemon Go. And then quickly, the other games, Pikmin Bloom, launched in 2020. Oh, unveiled in 2021, I was going to say.
I think it did launch in 21 as well.
Did it? That feels so long ago. Anyway, the game hit its higher active player count more than 3 years after launch. Players took 3.94 trillion steps in 2024. It's quite a lot of steps. Gathered at in-person community events in Japan, the US, Germany, and Taiwan. Brought together 10,000 plus participants alone in Tokyo last year. So notably, they don't say someone is here's how many actual players that there are or anything like that. But highest player count without saying what it is.
Yeah.
I guess that's positive, but that also says a lot about what the number is. But then Monster Hunter now, 50 million plus downloads in just 7 months after its launch. Its growing player base also quickly embraced real-life events. 20,000 people attended the first Monster Hunter Now Carnival event in Shibuya, Japan last October. Over 50% of its audience plays every day of the week.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. They mentioned Campfire and Wayfarer, but it doesn't look like too many details there. It says in 2024 alone, 6 billion plus people checked in to in-person meetups via Campfire. That's interesting. The Wayfarer community has added more than 11.5 million new Wayspot locations in Niantic's games since 2019. That's a lot of stats to throw out, everyone, from Scopely. But Aaron, you've got estimates for the revenue figures?
Yeah. So these are estimates from AppMagic, and so earlier this week I did a bit of a data dive, quite a thorough article. So again, worth looking on the website.
We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah. So over the past decade, AppMagic estimates that Niantic's games portfolio has generated $8.9 billion. So that's gross player spending from the Apple App Store and the Google Play. So, any web store revenue or alternative app stores isn't included. But so 8.9 billion across the portfolio. So about 95% of that is Pokemon Go, which has made 8.5 billion. So very successful game. So it's done that it's coming up on its 9th anniversary. Still roughly tracking that kind of billion a year. But 2024 was its worst year yet at 796.6 million, which is gross, which is quite an impressive worst year. It also just had its best weekend in 7 months, so since the anniversary, with Pokemon Go Tour Unova Global. Revenue spiked quite dramatically over those couple of days. So clearly still, when they do these big events, they pay off. Monster Hunter Now, meanwhile, has made 276 million gross. So it's just coming up on its 1.5-year anniversary. That's Niantic's second biggest or most lucrative game. And as the press release mentioned, stuff like the Carnival 2024 event went well, and kind of following the Pokemon Go formula of doing an in-person paid event that people could attend, and then doing kind of a global online version where I guess you miss out on the community side of it, but at least everyone can get access without flying to Japan or America or wherever. Monster Hunter Now's revenue has declined quite considerably since it came out. So in October 2023, made 42.5 million, and it made just under 6 in February this year. So clearly that has declined quite considerably. I guess it'll be interesting to see how much Scopely gets involved in the development and whether they turn that back around again, or whether the summer months are going to encourage people anyway. It's also quite noteworthy that so Capcom's just released Monster Hunter Wilds a few weeks ago, and that hasn't really done much.
I'm shocked by that. I know you can explain, but there's a good reason as to why you haven't seen a revenue spike in it. But I'm just surprised they didn't make more of it.
Yeah, I would have thought it would have driven more people to spend anyway. But also, so they did a kind of celebratory tie-in event of Monster Hunter Wilds coming out, and so they've added one monster from Wild so far, and playing through it. So the game has multiple quest lines that come out to tie into different things. So this Monster Hunter Wilds one was a 19-step quest line of go out and fight so many monsters would be step 1, and then go and collect so many resources. And you have to go through this long event, and step 18 out of 19 is where you actually get to fight the thing from Monster Hunter Wilds. And after you've done that, it can start to spawn on your map normally, but it won't do that before you've hit step 18 of the quest line.
It's just kind of wild, if you like, that the way they've done it, because the game has spikes, right, where they do interesting things, and then this is a game though that the the PC console release, it's like 8 million copies in like 3 days.
Yeah, it's like their best
You've got to
selling.
make more of that in the mobile game.
Sure. Yeah, because I think it's record breaking for Capcom, like for a new game release, even outside of Monster Hunter, just in general, like the opening weekend. So yeah, the fact that they didn't, they could have done a whole big thing of adding, a bunch of new monsters and they've done a few kind of paid passes before where you only get access to like special monsters if you've bought a ticket. Like they could have done. There's so many options, and they went with like the least expected one, really. And then so lastly with Pikmin Bloom. So although it's quite a lot smaller than like especially Pokemon Go, but also Monster Hunter now. So it's made about 80 million in gross revenue in 3.5 years almost. And so that's less than 1% of Niantic's entire portfolio's earnings, which is kind of crazy to think, but it has been growing, and December 2024 was its best month yet in revenue. It increased 65% year over year in December and made 4.4 million that month. So just tying that back to Monster Hunter Now, that is still less than Monster Hunter Now made in February this year, which was its worst month. So Pikmin's best is still less than Monster Hunter's worst. But it's at least kind of on that upward trajectory, which Monster Hunter Now is not at the moment.
I guess some of my final thoughts on this. After you talking about the revenue there, it's like, I think it's another reason why it feels like a Savvy acquisition and not a Scopely acquisition. Is that, again, it's prestige of having Pokemon, basically. And maybe some other IPs, if they can get them to work, so they can use the Niantic platform and the expertise that they've now got. But Niantic is not a growing company. Their games are not growing. Pikmin Bloom is at a small level. Like Monster Hunter Now, like you said, had its worst month. And then Pokemon Go revenue is ultimately way down. It's still like extremely lucrative. But usually, I think when you make a $3.5 billion acquisition as a mobile games company, you're acquiring something that's either like growing or is mature and revenue's very stable, and maybe you could grow it. Not games that are declining from their best. And then also, where does the next game come from? Because it's already been, like I said earlier, it's kind of, in a way, it's proven how difficult it is to make these kinds of games. So can Niantic, can this team, if that is even a focus, make a new game that, again, grows this investment? So, it seems very savvy-led. But all that said, I think actually Scopely and Savvy is a pretty good home for the people that work there and these games, because Scopely is ultimately an extremely well-run mobile games business, doing it for a long time, repeat successes. They know exactly what they're doing, basically. And ultimately with Savvy, it's a kind of a games and esports kind of tech in general. It's basically a key cornerstone of Saudi Arabia's future growth. And the other thing to mention that you mentioned previously is ultimately after all this completes, and I assume the conversations have already taken place, but what do the IP holders think? I guess that's the most important thing of this.
So I was thinking, on the Pikmin Bloom note, so I'm pretty sure Savvy has shares in like Nintendo already.
I think you mentioned. No, I was thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, they own the Nintendo stake. They also own a stake in Capcom.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So it actually kind of makes quite a lot of sense.
Right.
I forgot about the Capcom connection. So there's actually a lot of connections between.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that.
Any final thoughts, Aaron?
It's a lot to take in.
There's been a lot of big deals.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll have some kind of fresh thoughts for tomorrow's recording. Yeah, just obviously a big deal. Hopeful that Monster Hunter Now is going to survive the transition. That's my main kind of selfish personal stake in the matter. Obviously huge news. Congrats to Niantic for making a game that someone would buy for that much money 9 years down the line.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's really. I know this is kind of a lightning in a bottle, hard to recapture, because it's basically the Pokemon game everyone wanted, and the tech empowered that. And I guess it did kind of, their initial ambition to kind of get people outside and playing was achieved mostly with this one game. If that's still their ambition, we'll see what the future brings for both Niantic Spatial And now these games under Scopely's banner. Can't wait for the next $1 billion deal. There's been so many acquisitions just this week. Sort of investments really this week, and acquisitions announced lately. Obviously ahead of GDC, because everyone wants to talk about it at the show. We'll be there. But yeah. Thanks very much for that, Aaron. Thanks everyone for tuning in for our rambling hot takes on what's going on. We'll see you on the next show, and have a good day. Goodbye.